Joining us now, Joe DiGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia, all-round fine fella. Joe, good morning to you.
And the top of the morning to you.
All right. So the White House, apparently at a record rate, is denying FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. This is the method by which reporters and just anybody who wants to petition their government for information they may have on a certain issue goes through the process. And apparently at the White House, they're just knocking these things down at a record rate. What's your thought about that?
Well, what's interesting is what they're using to knock them down. Almost 8,500 times last year, the White House and the executive branch used national security. Now, it is an amazing gesture from an administration that said it was going to be the most transparent in history. When you hear that phrase from the president on videotape and you watch it, you have the sense you're watching a Soviet-era propaganda film and the doublespeak that George Orwell warned us of. This is really quite remarkable. And then they come out and they defend this, and they're saying that the news people who are critical of this are just basically stupid because they've actually responded to more requests than anybody. What the problem is, they're responding with no information.
Right.
When you say no, that's a response.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, even Patrick Leahy is saying that he's concerned about this because, you know, these FOIA requests, it's so easy if you've got something that you want to hide to just put a big top secret stamp on it and suddenly no one's going to see it for decades.
Well, just to give you an example, remember the former EPA administrator, the one that they had to put on a milk carton because no one had ever seen her?
Well, sure, and our friend Chris Horner from Competitive Enterprise Institute, he discovered that she was using a fake name and a fake email address.
That's my point.
Yeah.
And you know what? All of that was denied access to under Freedom of Information Act. No one was allowed to get access to that information. Ultimately, it came out. And what's interesting about that is it's not so much the FOIA part of it, but the lack of response from the administration. No investigation, no condemnation of her for literally violating federal law. Having a private email account to conduct government business is illegal. Nothing was done to her. She quietly left office and is now making a bundle sitting on the boards of numerous stupid companies that hired her.
You know, you and your partner in love and your partner in law there often represent national security folks, right?
Yes, we do.
So tell me what you think about this Senate-CIA fight that's going on.
Well, this is really quite startling. Nothing like this has ever happened before. What's more interesting is that it involves a Democrat chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, going after her counterpart, a Democrat CIA director. Now, it is true that John Brennan is a fake CIA director. He's a classic old apparatchik from the agency who spent his time figuring out ways to basically lie to people. I mean, Brennan is a remarkable figure, also kind of a Soviet-style intelligence officer, very, very much like Putin in many ways in the classic.
We're getting a lot of Stalin-esque comparisons from Joe DiGenova this morning.
And you know what? With good reason, because when you watch what Brennan and these people have done, remember, Brennan was in the agency during enhanced interrogation, and there's nothing on the record about him objecting to it, but all of a sudden when he got into the Obama administration, he expressed dislike for it, just like that deputy director, Mike Morrell, that Mike Rogers is so fond of up on the House Intelligence Committee. I mean, this is really fascinating. This is a clash of titans in one sense, in name, not in fact. I mean, I think Dianne Feinstein has stayed too long at the fair, and Brennan is being rewarded in the classic sense.
Well, is there any there, though, in your estimation?
You know what? We can't tell, because what is interesting about this, as soon as it exploded in the media, it disappeared. It was tamped down somewhat by other stories. But this got so ugly when the CIA referred the alleged stealing of its records by the Senate Intel Committee staff that everybody decided they better stop talking about this. This is going to get very, very bad for both Feinstein and Brennan. Brennan, however, is in the matrix now in terms of the nature of this problem, and nobody knows what's going to happen to this. My guess is there's not going to be any criminal charges whatsoever. This is a fight between two institutions, which the committee ultimately is going to lose, even though it shouldn't. They're going to lose because the agency will rope-a-dope them through the end of this administration.
Joe DiGenova, have you been watching the coverage of this missing Malaysian airliner? I know
hard to miss.
It's a little off your beat when we have you on, but I had, everyone's talking about it. Everyone has theories, and the conversations I've had over this weekend, I found the most fascinating theories coming from lawyers because they're used to looking at the evidence at hand and the information that they've got and then connecting dots. I'm interested. Do you have any theories?
Well, I'll tell you this. What's interesting about this is, actually, my wife and I investigated TWA 847, which was the hijacking in Beirut, Lebanon, in the 1980s, in which Robert Stedham, the Navy SEAL, was murdered on the tarmac in Beirut and became the most famous hijacking case in history. What's obvious about this is that from the beginning, the Malaysian government, to me, is the most important factor here. They have covered up everything. And this is all about, whether anybody likes it or not, protecting Islam. It's fascinating the lengths to which they have gone to demonstrate initially that nothing happened and to withhold information from the public that might show that something did happen. Some of this you can attribute to incompetence, but there's no doubt now that, in my opinion, the crew was involved in this. There's just absolutely no question. And I think whatever they found in both the pilot and the co-pilot's apartment, I'm hopeful we're going to all find out about that quickly. But this was clearly a terrorist operation. In other words, for me, it's terrorism when a pilot decides to take over a plane. That's the most likely explanation here, not that somebody stormed the cockpit. This was a pilot, co-pilot driven thing. And
Malaysia has not always been on people's map as sort of the most radical of Islamic nations.
It's not.
However, they've been moving in that direction in recent years, have they not?
They have indeed, and they have some very serious internal problems, and that's what a lot of this being secretive is about. Plus, it's a kind of government that isn't used to transparency. And we think we're used to transparency here. Obama has taught us differently that transparency is not really very important as long as it involves him. But in Malaysia, they're not used to this at all.
All right, Joe DiGenova, always appreciated. Thank you much.
Okay.